Hey guys, it's Misty with My Paper Cuts, and I am coming on to do a card share video. I want to share the card that I made using this stamp. This is Honey Pot from the Candy Bean line from LDRS. It is a cling rubber stamp. I picked this up and shared it in my D-Stash haul video last weekend. I got this from D-Stash Stamps over on Instagram. I'm going to go ahead and share the card, and then I'll go into the other products that I used as I go through what I did here. So I stamped the image in VersaFine Vintage Sepia ink and colored it in my Derwent Inktense pencils. Now when I watercolor, or pretty much any time I color anymore, I leave my stamp on my Misty or the Tim Holtz stamp platform, whichever I use, so that after I'm done coloring, I can go back and re-stamp it. So a lot of these like fine details, like these hash marks and such, they don't get lost in the opacity of the watercolors, or if you're using colored pencils, you can really tell that it's underneath the wax and you lose a lot of details. And if you wait and you re-stamp it after you color, then you can put all of that back in. But as I colored this vintage sepia just wasn't dark enough. So when I came back to restamp it, I stamped it in this one instead, which is the VersaFine Claire in Pinecone, which is a lot darker and is, it's almost black, but it definitely looked a lot better when I restamped it with this one. Of course, it didn't need to be that dark when I was coloring it, but it definitely helped bring out those details. So, on top of the honey there, you can see his honey. I did some glossy accents, and then I added some white details on his eyes and nose with my gel pen. And then in the very background behind the bear here, you can probably see some speckling. And I did that using that stamp that I had mentioned to you guys before. This was actually a woodblock stamp. You can kind of see some of the foam residue on the back there. This is a Stampin' Up! Stamp. But I unmounted this stamp because I really wanted the flexibility, no pun intended, of being able to just bend it around my finger, and then I could literally stamp like little tiny spots or big spots, however I felt like it. And I could turn it and just use just bits and pieces of it. I really like that extra use that I can get out of this. So I'm really glad I unmounted that one. And then I used the Distress Oxide Antique Linen for the back of that. That's one of my very favorite inks. And then this is cut out using, let's see, oh, this die set here, which is from Spellbinders. This is an old set. So Jill, if you happen to be watching, I use my really old stuff too. I love it. I will never part with most of my supplies. So yeah, I like my old stuff too. And you'll see another example of that in a few minutes. So that is cut out with that die set that I showed you. And then I inked that with the Vintage Photo, which is the regular distress ink. And then that's popped up on foam. And behind that, I actually made my own pattern paper using this big background stamp from Stampin' Up! This is from 1997. And the way that I like to use these, because using these big blocks is really awkward, I just put them on their back, and then I bring my paper, I'll just use the card as an example. I bring my paper to it and then press down with my hands, and then you get a much better image, and it's a lot less stressful. And if you like, you can put a little bit of double stick tape or a little piece of like shelf liner or that new grippy mat from Tim Holtz underneath it so it doesn't move. But it just, it's really much easier to use background stamps that way. So I made my own pattern paper, but then I didn't want to cover up all the work that I did on these, which I'll tell you about in a second. So unfortunately, I had to cut that piece pretty small. It still adds a little bit of color and a break between here and the background. But I think that was kind of unnecessary. But I did stamp that in this Distress Oxide peeled paint. And I don't know if you guys can really see how that turned out. Peeled paint always surprises me. It's never as green as the package looks. So I don't know. It's a fun one to use. So, and then behind that, this honeycomb that you see here is from this die. This was actually a stamp club, but it came with stamps and dies. And I wanted to use this kind of odd circular piece of like honeycomb. I don't know, it's very fine. I don't know if you guys can see that. And so I was really worried about cutting out this foil paper that I wanted to use. It's just the gold foil paper from Recollections. And if any of you have had that, you know it's super thin. So what I did was I actually used spray adhesive and just attached it to a piece of, this is the 65-pound, not the really thick stuff, but the 65-pound paper from Michaels. And I used yellow just in case any of it showed from the edges, but it turned out not to be a problem. So I just used spray adhesive to attach full sheets and then cut them down into the size that I needed. But I didn't like how just like gold this was. So what I did was I used some alcohol ink on the foil paper to give it a more distressed look. So I used a combination of this Bria Reese Brown. And then some of my alcohol inks are really old, you guys, but they still work perfectly. So I have this Adirondack Mushroom, which I know he still makes this with the Ranger. And then this one is the Rust. And I've used these a lot. I make ornaments every year and they're still almost full. So alcohol inks go a long way. And they work great on any non-porous surface. So I added that, and you can kind of see the difference in my scraps here. It'll be easier to see when I show, but you can see that brown. It just added kind of that funky distress that I was looking for. So I'll hold that up so you guys can see. So you can see like the variation in color. And then I just popped in a couple of the hexagons that were left, just randomly, just to add some interest to it. And I did cut out 2 for each card. So now I have this big bowl of these, which I haven't had the heart to throw away yet. So I'm gonna have to find a use for them. These ones don't have the alcohol ink on them. They're just the plain gold. But I don't have the heart to just toss those. So, and then there's a little bow from seam binding, and you'll see on the different cards, I had a couple scraps of seam binding that I used, but I mostly used this color. I love this kind of rusty color. This background panel here is a wood panel, and it'll be easier to tell what it is if I show you the die. So this was one of the Tuesday morning dies that I had picked up a while ago. This is just, it cuts out kind of these wood strips, but it does not cut out on the edges. See, the cut dies are only in the center. So this cuts into your panel. So it's intended for like the front of a card, as you can see there. So, but when I used this, there wasn't enough texture on it for me to really make it look like wood. So what I did was I got out a really old product, which is a texture plate from Sizzix. I think these are just called textures. This one is one of my favorites. It works like an embossing folder, but it doesn't obviously close. You're literally you just put paper on it, and then the pressure just adds the texture. And what's great about these is, one, they're bigger. They're like 6 by 7 or something, but each one comes with 2 textures. So you really got a lot of bang for your buck for these, even though you don't get the 3-dimensional and all that fancy schmancy stuff we have now, but they're very useful. But this one right here is my favorite. It's called Just Distressed, and it literally just adds so much to these pieces. So I'm going to get up real close there. Hopefully you'll be able to see it. It added a lot of texture. I did drag my ink blender over the top a little bit more, but hopefully you guys can see the texture that added. And then the pattern paper that I used in the background is from this, which I honestly don't remember where this came from. It's from Crafter's Companion. I don't know if this came in a kit or in one of those mystery bags or something. But it's called Detailed Decorations. And there's 48 pieces in this, which I don't know how, it's from 2018. I don't know how long it'll take me to go through this, but I'll give you guys a quick flip through of what's in here. I wanted the greens, and there was a couple yellows. I think I used one of the pinkish tones. But I was really gravitating towards this green and this green floral here, but then I used that cream one there too. So that's the paper that I used in the background. And then on the inside of the card, I used this stamp, which I'm sure a lot of you will recognize from Hobby Lobby. It is from Stampendous, but I used this. And I just stamped on the corner and on the edge here. And that was with this Distress Oxide Fossilized Amber. And then I went around the edges again, and that was back with the Distress Vintage Photo. And I left this one blank with no sentiments because, one, it was kind of a big image with a lot going on, and two, I've been trying to make more just kind of note card cards that anybody could use for anything. So that is my card share for today. I hope you guys like the card. I'm going to bring all the rest of them into the frame here so that you can see the difference with just the different background colors. There are 12 of them. So, but thanks for stopping by and watching my card share. I hope you guys like it, and I will see you again soon. Have a good evening.